Chapter 3. Moving from threat to thrive. In nearly every situation in life, you are moving towards something or you are moving away from something. For instance, do you go to work because you like what you do, or do you go because you don't want to go broke? These are entirely different reasons to go to work, and each can produce a very different neurochemical reaction. The first, you are going to work because you like it, capitalize on your reward chemistry and the ensuing neural activation. The second, you go because of the paycheck, is an avoidance behavior and is associated with negative feelings. Wow, this is a drag, or I really hate being here. I cannot wait for Friday. Kurt Lewin began writing about this phenomenon some 75 years ago, describing it as approach avoidance behavior, our tendency to move toward or away from situations. Since then, many psychologists and neuroscientists studied behavior and brain scans to see approach avoidance at work. A few scientists went so far as to suspect that approach avoidance characterizes most, if not all, of a person's life decisions. Whether that's true or not continues to be debated. Some say that arousal and mood have a lot to do with decision making too, and one thing seems clear, however: approach and avoidance are the ping pong paddles that bounce us between positive and negative neurochemical states. All the while, our brain is seeking a safe place. Unfortunately, many of us spend a good deal of life in avoidance, the state where we are moving away from something. Think about all the things you do because you want to avoid the perceived negative consequences if you don't. If your list is long, you're not alone. The constant pinching of anxiety can be hard on our body and brain, but if we can shift to an approach state, one where we are moving toward and reward rather than away from the threat, we will likely to feel better and get more done. In order to get ourselves into that approach state more often, it's essential to understand the states of mind and social interaction that might put us in an avoidance state. We cannot always choose whether we are in approach or avoidance. If you suffer an instant scare or get an undone insult from the boss, that external event is going to put you into an avoidance state. In times like this, we have to work very hard to choose a more productive, approach-oriented mindset. The brain operates very differently when we feel safe, when we are approaching, and that than it does when we feel threatened and are avoiding. If we understand the factor that researchers have found can lead to the threat and avoidance state, we are better to able to transition to the more productive mindset. I know I like myself best when I'm in a safe state, motivated by moving towards something. Getting there begins with a looking at your default approach to the world, and do you lean toward approach or avoidance thinking? Changing our perspective, changing our neurochemistry. Reframing the reason we do something can change our relationship with the situation and even the neurochemistry that's triggered in response to it. I began working with my personal trainer, Tony, because I wanted to avoid gaining more weight. I had been showing my friend's vacation picture when we came across one of me in my swimsuit. I exclaimed that I had man boobs, and no one disagreed, not even a polite attempt to lie. That did it for me. I know I needed to lose some weight, so I went to Tony to do just that. However, I know after only a few weeks of working out that I was framing my workout as avoidance, and it made trips to the gym a total chore. It was a constant struggle, and I felt bad. But eventually, I managed to change my motivation for working out with Tony, and I would been studying the brain, and I became convinced that the single best thing we can do for our brain is exercise. After having that realization, I have no longer moving away from the threat of being overweight. I now frame exercise as moving toward having a healthier brain and consequently a healthier body. Every time Tony puts me through a nasty little torture, I just think about the positive chain of chemical and vascular happiness going in my body. That's a different feeling than to be grudgingly working out more quadrant 2 than quadrant 3, and from time to time stop and ask yourself how you are living your life. Are you doing what you do to avoid losing something, or are you doing it because it feels good and gives you a sense of well-being? What is the biggest thing you are avoiding right now, and how could you reframe it to make it feel like you are approaching, not avoiding? Be careful not to use avoidant language in your reframing. Some avoidance behaviors can be masquerade as approach behaviors. Consider that work example. If you dread your job and get nothing out of it besides the money, you could tell yourself that you are moving toward your monthly paycheck when really you are in an avoidant mindset. You only want that paycheck to avoid hunger and the bill collector. A true approach mindset might see you motivated to go to work because you want to get so good at what you do that you will have an even more rewarding career than the one you have. It's not always as simple as that, but being aware of how we approach our everyday lives can help us control how we feel and behave. Seeking safety in our social interactions. One of the best ways to evaluate whether you are in approach or avoid mode is not how you feel and act when you are around other people. In every encounter you have, your brain is categorizing in interactions several times per second without our knowing as either a reward or a threat. We then behave accordingly, moving forward toward reward and defending against or moving away from threat. All day long, it's just about every encounter I have with others, especially when the encounter has a negative aspect. I stop to evaluate whether I'm feeling threatened or whether I'm pursuing something worthwhile in the interaction. Try doing the same in your daily interaction and check in with how you feel, good or bad, whether instantly or slightly. Many psychologists and neuroscientists have studied approach avoidance theory and how it affects social equilibrium. Earlier, I mentioned Kurt Lewin as progenitor of the approach avoidance idea, and many have followed in his wake. In his book Drive, author Daniel Ming writes about the approach avoidance idea as it relates to autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Martin Seligman gives his take on living in an approach mindset in his book Flourish, a visionary and new understanding of happiness and well-being. In an earlier acclaimed book, Learn Optimism, Seligman shows how avoidance or pessimism can lead to depression, while reframing in a more approach-based style leads to better overall mental health and helps to ward off some depression. David Rock, author of Your Brain at Work, offers a particularly helpful way to think approach and avoidance with his SCARF model. And Rock's model offers up a quick way to think about whether we are feeling safe or threatened in social situations. Whether we are moving away or toward, the letters in SCARF stand for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And research tells us that threat or reward states are initiated when there is a lack of or abundance or one of more of these areas. When we understand these 5 areas and can analyze how they play into our own life, we are better equipped to consciously transition from avoiding to approaching and from survive to thrive. So to that end, let's take a close look at each element of the SCARF model. As for status, where do we fit in the pecking order? Status is about where we stand in relation to other people. Do we have the highest title in the room or the lowest? It makes a difference in how we interact with the people around us, and those with higher status tend to feel safer, while those with the lower status are more likely to be in the threatened state. Of course, your status is not fixed. It can even change many times throughout the day. Think about your status at work and home, in the community, and our sense of authority changes with status, and our neurochemistry follows, initiating emotion associated mostly with quadrant 2 when we have a higher status and quadrant 3 when we have a lower status. To see how status changes our behavior, think about how you are when you are interacting with your boss's boss, probably more guarded and polite than usual, and the sense of slight threat narrows your behavior a bit. Now think of yourself when you're interacting with peers or with employees who report to you. Are you a loser or maybe more jovial, busier? Status can present a threat when we don't have it, and a reward when we have the opportunity to get more of it. Activation. Status. If you are the boss, give status to direct report by telling them they are the lead of the certain project, that you will respect their decisions. Also refrain from needing to always be the smartest person in the room. Give orders to change if you know the answer. C. Certainty. Our brains crave knowing what's next. The second element of the SCARF model is certainty. Certainty gives us a sense of control, and we are wired to want it, if not crave it. When our ancestors awoke each day and stepped outside their dwellings, they wanted to be certain of what dangers lurked around the corner, so they were on high alert. Not knowing what was out there could lead to their death, thanks to the hypervigilance of our amygdala and surprises in the environment. We continue to have the same need. Since the brain is a linear processing machine, it's looking for patterns and certainty in those patterns in order to make sense of the world. When we have certainty, we feel safe. Uncertainty, however, makes us want to only do what we feel safe, which means we fall back to tried and true behavior towards shunning on anything that's innovative or daring. The need for too much certainty can cause paralysis and lack of spontaneity. Look at Wall Street. The financial sector's need for certainty each quarter can cripple companies looking to create and execute long-term strategies that do not provide a lot of certainty. If you are in an organization going through massive change, you are going through an exercise in uncertainty. Employees become more protective and have a tendency to do what they have always done because the predictable result feels safe. Every organization is changing all the time, some more than others because the mergers, acquisitions, staff resizing, that's scary. The paradox is that at these precise times, we typically want the new thing, intelligent risk-taking and competent decision-making. But these things are more difficult in a uncertainty environment. When you start feeling uncertain because one aspect of your life is about to change, it's a good idea to find comfort in a routine that's not going to change. It can be something as simple as working out or beginning to work day by organizing your office, and it gives your brain a break from the dread state of uncertainty and may help you shift out of the avoidance state in the other areas of your life. Activation, certainty. Use agendas for meeting and stick to them. Communicate what is not going to change when things are changing rapidly, and create weekly rituals with your team. Conversely, override the need for certainty and sometimes go into the scary unknown. Life becomes more interesting when it's sometimes spontaneous. A for autonomy, the power of choice. Jeff Immelt, chairman of the CEO of GE General Electric, of course, was once asked what he thought was a critical leadership attribute: decision making. He answered decisively. The ability to make and execute a decision quickly and then to change of course if that's ability to make execute a decision quickly and then to change course if that's necessary is going to determine a lot about who leaders are going forward. Imad feels that choosing a path and then dealing with the consequences, good or bad, is crucial to great leadership. The good news is that most of the time the brain wants to decide. At the very least, making a decision resolve the discomfort that comes when we need to make a choice but haven't yet. Records this aside to make decision autonomy, regulating the self when we feel like we don't get to make choices we should get to make, and our amygdala sounds the alarm and we start feeling threatened. The internal response we might be thinking is often along the lines of, "You are not the boss of me, I will do that what I want." So it's interesting that as emails point out, we need to become good at choosing a path that we want to have a choices, and that ironically, we see many leaders who lack the ability to take decision active actions. This tension might not have to do with the fact that we are also pulled toward the need to be right, that need to have a status, to be the smartest person in the room. Herein lies the pull match we play internally every day. If you are aware of that tug of war of war, the desire to decide on one hand and the desire to not make the wrong decision on the other. You have a better chance of resolving it, and they are two sides of the virtual void coin, and as the melt in place. We are usually better off here, as elsewhere, when we are approaching, not avoiding. Relatedness, fitting in with more than kin. Since we were little ones, we have all wanted to fit in with a group. There are a few things that feel better than being welcomed into a group and feeling a sense of belonging. Of course, the need of full belonging has a good and bad side, and one of the most heartbreaking but early learned punishment we experience is banishment from the group. It happened on the playground, can happen in the workplace. When our ancestors used banishment from the clan as the punishment, they were essentially sentencing someone to death because of the dangerous world beyond the clan. Alone, the banished person met with the treachery of harsh climates, killer animals and plants, and the difficulty of gathering food. Alone we are too weak, but together we become strong enough to survive all these things. And still today, the feeling of being related in is an enormous psychological pull. We are so sensitive to social rejection and abstractions that they actually activate the same pain receptor in the brain as when you break a bone. We survive by being in the tribe, not outside it. And today the in group is so the popular one. The out group is not. Think about when you thought you should be included in a meeting or a conversation and you are not. It feels bad, right? It's a threat and you want to move away from it. F for fairness, one of the brain's great rewards. Today, neuroscientists are devoting a lot of their experimentation time to the concept of fairness, and they have discovered a place in the brain that responds to fairness in the same way the brain responds to sex and chocolate, very positively. In other words, the brain sees fairness as a reward. Carnegie Mellon's Golness Tabibnia and her associate found that when things are basically equal between two people, the relationship feels positive. When there is an imbalance, no matter how trivial the opposite party believes it to be, negativity seeps in, the fireworks start to ignite, and in the form of the withheld information, passive-aggressive behavior, and complete rejection of the relationship, that tells you something about the evil concept of fairness. Fagins, the brain's craving for the reward feeling that fairness can create is strong enough. The people will often go out of their way to even up the score when they feel jilted. Activation. Fairness. Give everyone the same opportunity to have a shot at major things like a jobs, project, or great work trips. If something feels unfair to you, acknowledge it and communicate it often. Others have no idea what specific things are important to us. The only way they can is to hear them. Also, made our rewards, awards, and bonuses based on clear guidelines, especially if you are a boss. Obviously, this discussion skims the surface of the inner working of the brain as they pertain to our behavior, but when we become from a place of knowing, we can be more in control of our destiny, living in by design, not by default, and the neurochemistry of our brain seems like an arcane set of fluids and electrical transmission that are difficult to visualize. But we can see them acting out in our social self every single day, at every moment. Once you are aware of them, you will see them play out in nearly every aspect of our business and personal life. I wish it was easy as going to the paint store and mixing a little of this and a little of that to come up with the exact perfect amount of neurochemistry for the moment. It's not, of course. Our gift is our greatest challenge. Our ability to think about things in the past and in the future and assign emotional states to them. And those states, as you have discovered, drive our behavior and can be productive and sometimes destructive. Now that we have laid that foundation, we can move on to the rest of the book, where we will see how you can increase your sense of control over your life, improve your stamina, and increase your feelings of significance. 2. Controlling your success. Chapter 4. Taking control of your life. There is a shopping mall near my house with an indoor playground for kids. I find it fascinating to watch the joy, the lunacy, and unfortunately the inevitable tears that come with the kids and the play state. There are enormous adult lessons in the children's play, and watching them is the amazing way to understand how adult humans wrestle with the issue of control. We are all just big kids at heart, and the content of our games is simply different and more sophisticated. Kids display their struggles with control a little more readily, while adults learn to hide and mask it. Still, as adults, if we don't possess enough control, the emotional center of the brain can get out of hand. Think of the emotional center of the brain as a playground filled with 2 to 6 years old, all screaming and running all over the place in their own particular way. Without some adult supervision, things can quickly get out of control. The prefrontal cortex, as we learned in Chapter 1, helps us stop and reason before we act on our emotions. It's the supervisor to the limbic system, the emotional center symbolized by all those kids. And we bring control to our emotions in part because we want to avoid being disciplined by the supervisor. We are often rewarded by controlling ourselves by an increased sense of well-being. Plus, we are often rewarded in our jobs, at home, and in our communities. When we show that we can make a good decision, be confident, exert willpower, and achieve goals, all part of our control mechanism. The idea of feeling in control has been a central focus of psychologists and neuroscientists for years, and now we understand even more fully how it affects our work life. We have learned that the feeling of control is an essential emotional attribute. Ultimately, we want to be in control of where we are going and how we get there. We sometimes go so far as to convince ourselves that we can control our emotions so completely as to make decisions or conduct negotiations without emotion. While being devoid of any emotion is basically impossible for the normal brain. Regulation of emotions puts us in the driver's seats in control both personally and professionally. From a day-to-day perspective, control is central to our success. It gives us direction and helps us be self-directed enough to achieve our goals. When we feel safely in control, we can make plans for a direction, our goals, and control also give us impetus to get started on those goals. It can change just about everything we do, from how we behave in meetings, to how we give and receive performance reviews, to how we negotiate, to how we give high stakes presentation. When we are in control, we can make ethical choices, hold off on impulsive decisions, listen more appreciatively, and perform better in our job. Manage the animus, anxiety that often comes from high pressure jobs, and be more effective overall. Our sense of control also influences things like working memory, the type of surface memory that allow us to be fluid in our thinking from moment to moment, and critical for selective attention so that we can get things done, and is the mainstay of impulse control. Control is both a biological and sociological phenomenon. It shows up in brain circuitry and chemistry, and is considered a positive attribute in most social settings. A sense of control brings on the neurochemistry of pleasure. It is a rewarding feeling, and feeling of lack of control can be almost debilitating in life. To better understand how to leverage control in your life, you must first understand your personal relationship with control. We all have an internal or external focus when it comes to control, and understanding your current perspective will help you move to a more positive position, and we will do that in the following section. Following that, we will grapple with what happens when we have too much control or become obsessed with control, and you will learn how to spot warning signs in your own life. Finally, in this chapter's final section, you will learn a basic skill for moving to a greater sense of control in your life and defining your own success. Control is about perspective, external versus internal control. Who is responsible for your success? It is your broker, your life partner, your parents, your boss, your employees. all of whom can hand us opportunity or throw us curveballs. Or is your success in your hands and your hands alone? There are two very different ways of framing who has control over our success in life and which one we learn toward can have a large impact on our life. Psychologists refer to this as an external locus of control. Like others have control versus an internal locus of control. You have control. Most of us have a mix of the two, but when we confronted with a certain situation, many of us will default to one of these two attitudes. Let's say you don't get a job promotion because one of the requirements is that you have an MBA. If you are internally focused, you will likely investigate how to get an MBA and take a step toward that, or make a decision to go on a job path that does not require one. You see yourself as having control over that situation, and you are able to be proactive if you are extremely focused, however. You might blame the inflexibility of the interviewer, of the ruler, of the company, and the lack of an offer. You will be less likely to take a step toward getting an MBA because you would see it as someone else's problem, not yours. And think about where you fall on the spectrum. Are you closer to the internal or external side? Both extremes have the upside and downsides. If you have a strong internal sense of control, you will likely be more self-directed and goal-oriented, but you might also suffer from blaming yourself for events that are indeed out of your control. I met a corporate FP, vice president, in one of my classes who had an intense internal locus of control. Responsibility oozed out of her mouth every time he spoke. During a break, she confided in me that she just discovered that she had cancer and that she should have seen it coming. It was her fault. She believed that the disease had gotten as far as it had. That deep internal focus is filled with all kind of self-blame and other unproductive emotions. On the other hand, if you are externally focused, you may blame circumstances or other people for failure in your life, losing sight of the control you do have over the path of your life takes. Although both sides have their drawbacks throughout this book, I will be nudging you toward an internal focus. When you feel that sense of control over what happens to you, you are more likely to be successful. You will take responsibility for the ups and downs that come your way and not the secret to success. Being aware of what we can control puts us in the driver's seats. You can start moving toward an internal locus of control by simply listening to the way you speak. When something occurs that is not your liking, if your immediate response is to look for all the reason why others or circumstances caused this bad thing in your life, take a moment before responding and reframe the statement into an I statement. Why did you have to do with this scenario? What could you have done to change the outcome? That's taking control. When we switch our language, we open our brain to the possibility of learning from the mistake, and conversely, when we blame others, they are the ones who have to learn before the outcome can change. And how could we possibly control that? What's wrong with that comment, you might ask? Maybe the media did overblow it, perhaps? But this player went from taking responsibility for his actions to blaming TV reporter for what they do, create sensational television, yeah. Because a major story in the National Football League criticized the press for its coverage of his outbursts about the opposite player after a big divisional championship game on the national TV with 30 million people watching. He was endlessly interviewed for several days after the incident, and he apologized for his nasty comment. Yeah. In essence, his second comment said that his team was suffering because of the media attention, not because of him and his television outbursts. It is difficult to completely own our faux without saying, yes, I did that, but blah blah blah, and then going to explain why we should be excused. Still, it would have been more elegant for this star player to stop before he got to the blame. We all have moments that are not exactly perfect, but owning them is more attractive than blaming them on someone else. We owned poet and author David White said at an international symposium on emotional intelligence that we are most loved for our vulnerabilities and honesty about them. Even though we want to disown our foibles, we may actually hurt ourselves when we do that. Competence, excellence, meeting deadlines, meeting budgets, showing consideration, collaborating, and the like are half of who we are. The other half is made up of our shortcoming, being late, inability to see the big picture in a particular instance, dictatorial moment, bad relationship that indicate the lapse of in our emotional intelligence, and so many other situations that show us for the human we are. As you will learn in the next chapter, part of control is confidence, which means we accept the entire picture of who we are, both good or bad. Of course, that knowledge does not allow us to abdicate responsibility for self-improvement or from ownership of those bad moments. An excellent way to switch your focus from external to internal is to start noticing examples of this disposition in others. Whether in the people you work with or stories in the news, you will hear it in quick retorts. Jack, you are late for too many meetings. Someone says to Jack and he'll replace, I know, but too many people are scheduling a meeting with me. Seems like a plausible excuse, but Jack is blaming the environment for something he does in fact have control over. If Jack reframes his position and sees that control lies within him, he might say instead, I know, I'm going to look at how I schedule meetings because this does not work the way it is right now. The first example acknowledges that the universe is unfair in the amount of meeting it requires of Jack. The second one lays out a corrective action that Jack will take, and once you have become adept at seeing the two logi of control in others, start noticing a sample of your own framing. This next example of this concept is an extreme case, and yet it serves to illustrate how external focus in general can lead to unpleasant outcomes. For our purposes, the important thing about this story is not so much the gene study as it is the light the story sheds on the power of internal locus of control. By choosing to nurture or ignore the genetic tendencies we are born with, we can have a hand in causing unwanted behavioral expression to go dormant or become extinct. As we with the stockbroker, or cause the gene to fully express itself as with the inmate. Unfortunately for the inmate and for society, his gene expression was hugely negative and completely externally focused. But ultimately, we can all make a conscious choice to take control of our future and stop blaming the past, others, the circumstances. When we get stuck in our past, we are essentially saying, I have no control over my future, but taking control of the future is one of the single greatest gifts we can give ourselves. When we do so, we get to have to say in the outcome of our life. The downside of control. As I have mentioned before, control has a dark side. For me, it comes out when I'm riding in a car with someone else driving. In that situation, I have to make an active and conscious effort to give up control. I just know that my internal map knows the better way to get to where we are going. When I force myself to let go and allow my prefrontal cortex to get into my mental discussion, I realize it does not matter one iota if we got there 15 seconds or 15 minutes later, going to the direction the driver is going, and we may even arrive earlier at that moment. I can relax and pay attention to other things, including the amazing company I'm riding with. An inner control freak lurks in all of us. The freak comes out in different situations for each of us, and it typically happens when there is a lack of trust and when we feel that the other individual's judgment is not reliable. It's one of the reasons we don't like control freaks. It feels like they don't trust us, and that can be damaging to a relationship. And what are the areas in your life where you feel the need to control when it might not serve your purpose? For instance, are you a micromanager who cannot let go of managing all of the detail of your employee work because You know the best and only way to get something done? If your need to control works in backseat driving or needing to perfectly clean office, or you desire to always get a word on every subject, what other when you are going into that situation, when we are aware enough to know and take the responsibility for our life controlling impulses, we get a lot more forgiveness for these rough ages. Give up control is a kind of control in itself. It means learning to control the impulse we feel to speak up or jump in that is harder than it sounds. One tactic is to have a quick internal conversation and ask yourself whether the person on the receiving end of your control is grateful for the instruction. Also, evaluate your trust level with the other individual. If you don't trust them, there is work to be done in the relationship so that they can feel less control and you can be less controlling. Part of feeling in control without trying to exert undue control over others is understanding what appropriate control can bring us, namely success. And those who craft their own definition of success are more able to feel in control, which enables them to direct their effort toward achieving goals. A trait of successful individuals is a circular construction. Let's now look at how to define success. Define success to activate control. Yeah, when we define and understand what success is for us, the unlikelihood that we can feel more in control increases. One of my favorite parables about how success means something different to each of us is about a simple fisherman who meets a businessman. The fisherman explained his modest life of fishing, maybe with his wife, playing with his grandchildren, and meeting his friends for food, music, for fun each night. And the businessman is incredulous that the fisherman has not strategically thought about expanding his business into fleets of fishing boats and creating multi-million in profit. The fisherman asks the businessman how long this will take and what the result will be. The businessman tells him that after he has spent 20 years or something to making his fortune, and the fisherman will then be able to go fishing, nap with his wife, play with his grandchildren, meet his friends for music, food, and fun each evening. Whether it's simple catch a stay or running a mega conglomerate, defining what success means is one of the key of control. Yeah, and goal of achievement. We will address how to refine your goals and how achieving those goals will create positive success messages in your brain. For now, consider what the big picture of success looks like. Chapter 5: The confidence that comes with control. The mega hit television program Survivor, The Apprentice, and The Voice all have one thing in common. British producer Mark Burnett, in an interview about how he became arguably the most successful producer of American television of all the time, he said, "First, I have always done things I was interested in, but I don't think anyone can ever tell you that they know if anything is really going to work for sure, but you do it anyway." We all know that those who need to be 100% sure of something never do anything. Burnett's insightful comment is the central tenet of confidence. The willingness to jump into something without a 100% guarantee, since few things in life, if any, offer that kind of guarantee. We have to have confidence to get things done, feel good about our accomplishment, and be willing to try new things, and all of which are good for us and our brains. Most of us would like more confidence. It consistently shows up on lists of the most admirable traits. How do we get more confidence? Well, thing that seems constant in the theories and research is that we have confidence when we feel we have some sense of control over a particular circumstance or outcome. We may not be certain how it will turn out, but we have at least a kernel of control over what happens. My fitness trainer, Tony, recently had mouth surgery. His teeth are all sort of difficult for him. His baby teeth haven't completely fallen out, and some of his adult teeth are waiting to emerge, but many are apparently too big for his mouth. He got new braces before the surgery so that the new adult teeth are not destructive to his mouth when they do come in. His mouth is filled with the widely spaced teeth. I have known Tony for our years. I've only noticed his teeth a few times, but he always smiles even when he is battering my body, especially then. Tony has strong self-confidence, and we all see him as an assured, fun-loving, ever-smiling, cool guy. If he were busy covering up his teeth, he would likely notice that instead of his infectious smile, Tony exuded confidence, so that's what we noticed. Tony was aware of his teeth, of course, but he did something confident people do. He took control of the situation, and when he could afford to do something about it, he did. Until then, his teeth were just a part of his charm. Confidence is not about perfection, as Mark Burnett so aptly suggested. We won't ever get off the couch if we wait for perfection. Confidence is also part of the virtuous circle. When we have it, it's easier to get more of it. Without confidence, however, we might not have the courage to get some in the first place. Acquiring confidence requires a dose of daring and belief in ourselves, and we have to avoid confident killer like comparisons. We have to rely on our strengths and times of success to build trust that we can be successful again, and we have to try new things to practice our confidence, because like most of the things, building your confidence can become a habit if you work at it. Self-confidence, competence, and belief in it. Andrew stands beyond the point of no return on the double black diamond skyline that our mutual friend, expert skier Ed, has led him to at Loveland Basin in Colorado. He later told us how furious he was at first. The sky ran nearly straight down with some little ledges or rocks. Adds descriptions. This is well beyond the scope of Andrew's skiing ability. Then Andrew blows off his anger and masters his courage. The only way down to the bottom where we were waiting that it shaved 30 minutes of our sky day. Andrew generally a confident man. He knows his abilities, and had he been us, he likely would have opted out of the sky run so clearly beyond his ability, but he was not us. And it's not that how it is many times. We are asked to do something in our job that is not our liking and maybe beyond our skill level. That's when belief in ourselves is essential. Do you believe in general that you can? There is no easy way to get that I can attitude. But it appears that those who practice not being 100% certain before taking the plunge are better at mastering the courage and confidence to act. The perfectionists in the crowd suffer from a lack of self-confidence more often because that 100% mark is so elusive. In talking about it later, Andrew admitted that gathering the courage to make it down the hill instead of trudging several yards back uphill was not about him imagining that he would or should look like an Olympic caliber skier. He said he did not once consider comparing himself to the expert skiers flying by as he struggled to stay upright. Andrew says it was about telling himself that somehow he could make it to the bottom in one piece. He believed got him started. A big chunk of self-confidence is courage, and another is our belief in our ability to do something. Overall, and that belief helps predict how we will interact with the future. Your belief in your own ability to accomplish your goal is called self-efficacy. If your goal is your own ability to accomplish your goals is called self-efficacy. Accomplish your goal is called self-efficacy. If your goal is to be good presenter and you believe you will be, with some guidance and practice, then you are more likely to do what it takes to get there. The Center for Confidence and Well-being in the United Kingdom says confidence is self-efficacy plus optimism. Optimism is, of course, your positive feeling and hope about the future. It's not about having an overly rosy view of the future, but about believing you can do what you need and want to do. And self-confidence is not necessarily a fixed trait. It's something that can come and go with our ability level, and yet those who are generally self-confident usually try more things, even when they lack any ability. Their belief ignites their courage to try. Those with low self-confidence will often tell themselves they cannot do something well, so they won't try at all. And Andrew was confident that he would get to the bottom of the mountain. How and when? We're not the issue. He did not have a high level of skill, but he believed he could solve the problem of the getting down. So confidence is not automatically equated with skill, even though we often act as if it is. While it can appear that only masterful people are confident, we don't always see the times they attempted something that and failed. I have seen extremely confident people fail miserably at an activity and keep their self-confidence intact. They feel good about themselves in general, and they feel good that they even tried. Of course, self-confident individuals feel somewhat bad when they miss their target, but they are more resilient in quickly than those who lack a general sense of self-confidence. Confident people try new things without comparing themselves to others. They might use another person's skill as a benchmark or an example, but they don't compare themselves with that person to lay out a pecking order. Instead, they compare the learned. Confident individuals are focused on the experience and the feedback they get from those who can do better than them. They may even ask those better than them for direct and constant feedback so that they have a change to improve their competence. I was describing this concept to an executive, and he told me that his boss does this well. The boss deemed this guy to be a great presenter, so every time the boss gave a presentation, he asked the executive to give him one thing he can improve the next time, and you were fine. It's not an option. This boss has enough self-confidence to solicit a feedback from his employee because he knows that he himself does not have the skill level he wants to achieve eventually. It's another example of how self-confidence is a circular concept. You get more of it when you try something and then succeed, and you need in order to even attempt in the first place. Even those with high competence or even mastery in a skill might struggle with confidence. Recently, at a medical conference, I witnessed one of the most competent people in his field completely stumble in his presentation before an audience of several hundred other physicians. He was an undisputed master in his subject area, but on the day of the presentation, he seemed to lack of the confidence to deliver his knowledge to thousands eyeballs staring back at him. He may have been suffering from perceived high expectation and the feeling that he needed to be perfect in front of his peers. That may have put his focus on himself and how he looked instead of on the audience and what they would learn. Perfectionism is just one of the confidence killers that many of us will fall victim to in our careers and life. And let's look at it at a couple of others. The confidence killers: perfectionism, comparison, and what ifs. Corporate halls are filled with high-ranking business people who have difficulty acknowledging their level of mastery. They are always striving for the unattainable perfection that pulls them forward, and once we achieve a certain level of mastery, it is difficult to admit to ourselves that we have accomplished a great thing. The mantra is to always do more, be more, and have more. That's fine. Striving is an important part of excellence. However, so is humbly accepting that we have achieved a level of excellence already. It doesn't mean we stop striving. It means we can be compassionate with ourselves in a way that fills our confidence bucket, not our arrogance bucket. If we don't get off the ride on the way to the mysterious place of perfection and take stock, we are certain to become the exact person we don't want to be, and feeling like a failure can put us in a full mood. We become barking tyrants who create in the lives of employers, colleges, and others around us the misery we feel in ourselves for not always hitting the mark. If you have perfectionism coursing through your veins, beware. In its extreme form, perfectionism is considered an anxiety and disorder as a driver and a confidence killer at the same time. Let's go back to skiing to uncover our next confidence killer: comparing ourselves to others. Say, you have never tried skiing before, and you will probably fall a lot when you first get on the skis. But With a few basic lessons, you can turn and stop. Do you decide never to sky because you lack the ability to do it well? If so, you are limiting yourself to only the things you already know how to do. And for those people with an external focus of control, new skills are difficult because their tendency is to blame the environment for any less than perfect performance. Those who lack self-confidence and who are unwilling to take control of the environment are doomed to self-comparison and blame when they constantly compare themselves to others who can do something better than them. Comparing ourselves to others is a tricky because we naturally do it, but if it stops us from venturing out to try the new things, the only person who loses is us. Successful people take control and take the steps necessary to at least make it down to the mountain. Certainly, the feeling of self-confidence may go up and when we get better at something, but resist believing that confidence will always follow from competence. When asked what makes them feel self-confident when they are presenting, most presenters will say they feel confident when they know their stuff. But remember this physician a few pages ago. Think about the other brilliant PhD scientists or engineers who know their stuff and completely flip as a presenter. Their knowledge does not give them self-confidence. So what is it? They are likely focused on comparing themselves to others. Their less than rewarding performance may be weighed down by a little voice that whispers to them that a great presenter don't sweat or feel anxiety before they speak. Rubbish, all rubbish. The self-confident individual in this situation says, I know my topic is normal physiological phenomenon to get a little anxious before presenting. It's actually a signal that I'm alert and it's okay to sweat in front of others and no one ever died doing it. Just go. For some people, tough, it is difficult to assume this mindset. Our worries about performance and our comparison to others and our lack of confidence often lead to a third confidence killer, what if thinking, which can wreak even more havoc on our confidence. It is a vicious cycle and it takes focus and attention to break out of it. For some people, it requires daily work. Here is a method to calm the what if jitters that has a practical application in others' area of self-confidence. See if you can apply it to your own situation when your confidence is hampered by worry of what could go wrong. Of course, perfectionism, comparisons, and what ifs are not the only confidence killer that creep into our day and spoil our belief in ourselves, but they are some of the biggest. Take a moment now and think about which confidence killing situation you are likely to encounter. Is it a performance review with your boss where you anticipate negative feedback, a meeting with a client from a large account, maybe the chief executive from your company is coming and you will have an audience with her, and maybe you are meeting a possible life partner on a blind date? As you can see, the list of things that can cause that fit the anxious feeling and displace our confidence is seemingly endless. Try the activation and apply it to your crisis of confidence and see how it works for you. The entire activation is about control, mostly controlling what might come up in the future. And remember, our brain deplores uncertainty about the future and comes down when we have a good idea of what is next. Over time, we can learn to trust ourselves to the point where we become comfortable with the discomfort of the unknown. And that can be one of avenue to confidence. And let's now look at the two particularly helpful confidence builders you can also put to use the next time you feel your confidence slipping away. Confidence Builder 1. Build and rely on your intuition. How do you describe how to ride a bike to someone who has never ridden one and get them to ride it perfectly the first time? How do you know exactly which keys to play without looking on a piano in order to play a masterpiece? How do you know a truth from a lie? It's difficult to verbalize the answers to these questions. We don't have the language for it. We cannot explain all the musculature that goes into the balance of the bike or the pre-perceptions require. We also don't have quite a language To tell how we know if someone is lying or not, our consolidated experiences over a lifetime and tucked into the folds of our brain help us to ascertain quickly how we feel about what someone has just said. It's not a fail-safe message from our brain, but it's a piece of data we should not ignore. When we are called upon to ride a bike or decide what been lying and telling the truth, our brains start cut right to the relevant information, allowing us to act quickly through experience over time. We store all the bits and pieces of information in our brain, and even though we put it in there in fragments, the data is consolidated and the brain can access it through the remarkable adaptive shortcut. We do a lot of that consolidating as kids, but we continue to do it throughout our life as we learn and become competent at new things. If we had to recall all the elements for a regularly performed motor activity every time we did it, our brain will be overwhelmed and the amount of glucose expenditure will be enormous. We would be exhausted just bringing our teeth, and we would likely never invent anything new, and our prefrontal cortex would likely be taking naps all day from having to pay attention to so many activities. We have developed a form of instant retrieval so that energy expenditure is less and the load of our brains is minimal. One such form of instant retrieval is called heuristics. That's the word used to describe activities that help us learn through experience and trial and error. It's a form of problem solving and decision making that allows intuition, common sense, experiential learning, and other pieces of information to come together in a matter of a few seconds or less to allow us to make decisions. For the most part, we feel pretty certain and pretty confident when our heuristics kick in and tell us about something. Sometimes that information is just that information and should be used with the other pieces of data to make a well-rounded decision. And in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman tell us that the intuitive heuristic capabilities we have can be highly beneficial in some situations when we have to make snap judgment, while in others we can be tripped by not being more deliberate and logical than our biased, intuitive and quick decisions allow. Your area of mastery or expertise is often a consolidation of skills, experience, and many other small bits of data that end up to a profound knowing. It means say that it takes approximately 10,000 hours of study to master a topic, and that translates to about 47 years if we only studied something for an hour every day of a week except weekends. If we study it 4 hours a daily, we are at more than 10 years. And most of us don't have that kind of time to devote to anything one thing each day, but our brains pick up on so many things that we don't notice when we are absorbed in a topic. As a matter of fact, study is only one part of heurism. Experience and practice are the others, and it's the consolidation of the three that leads to the sense of intuitive knowing. Over time, that consolidation helps us to know something immediately, and over time, we develop a sense about an activity that allows us to make quick assessments that are often accurate but difficult to explain. Many call it a form of intuition. Philosopher and biologist Massimo Pigliucci writes in an answer for Aristotle, how science and philosophy can lead us to a more meaningful life. One of the first things that modern research on intuition has clearly shown is that there is no such a thing as an intuitive person thought court. Intuition is a domain-specific ability so that people can be very intuitive about one thing and just as clueless as the average person about pretty much everything else. And moreover, intuition got better with practice, especially with a lot of practice, because at bottom, intuition is about the brain's ability to pick up of a certain recurring patterns. The more we are exposed to a particular domain of activity, the more familiar we become with the relevant patterns, and the more and faster our brains generate heuristic solutions to the problem we happen to be facing within that domain. Heuristics and intuitions are one of the most exciting and interesting fields of study today. What is encouraging is that we can all learn heuristically, but if our brain is messy, with too many distractions and overrun with too many things to do, our ability to focus on the environment and pick up heuristic capabilities likely suffer. We get better at intuition the more opportunity we have to see and experience things clearly. And according to Coyle's research, slowly, if we are running around with our hair on a fire all the time, it's going to be very difficult to shut our feelings, much less make decisions about those feelings. If we get to practice things slowly in a controlled way and with focus, we eventually get to that heuristic quality, and we will take a closer look at how to build willpower and focus coming up. Heuristic learning is what helps us become expert on the job as we gather more and more experience and practice. What's the difference between a highly educated college graduate who has learned all of the latest knowledge about finance and an employee who has an additional 10 years of experience in finance on top of that college education? To things, experience, and practice, which breed confidence in the later individual's decision-making ability that is valuable to any career, especially in this rapidly moving world. When we are new in a job, and especially just out of college or a vocational education, we are a lot more transactional in our approach to the job. By transactional, I mean the tasks that you do that are replicable that another person could do with a little bit of direction, and those transactional skills do not have nearly the perceived values. As someone who both knows what to do is doing it in a flash, the person who knows how and why and does it without having to think about all the steps can critically think more quickly and make better decisions overall. That comes from experience and practice. An executive came up with a great example of the difference between his transactional and heuristic activities. He said, scheduling meetings with suppliers in his supply chain is the transactional side, along with the getting on an airplane and having those meetings. He can teach anyone how that is done in a short amount of time. The heuristic side is made up of the activities he learned how to excel at after years of trial and error, building deep relationship of trust with vendors, negotiating, and building mutual interest. He explained that he could tell someone the mechanical aspect of those activities, but the building trust and learning to read people is just something he knows how to do after years of paying attention to the relationship side of the business. When he walks into those meetings, he's confident that he will be able to navigate what comes to reach a positive outcome. There are many examples every day, and it is likely you have your own set of heuristic capabilities. The more you are aware of them, the more you can hone them and articulate your value to others when appropriate. And more importantly, because we are confident when acting within our heuristic capabilities, we can build confidence in other areas by thinking about these activities and how they make us feel. Sometimes recalling a sense of confidence from other part of our lives or in other situations can help us find the courage to take the necessary action in our current situation. Activation. What do you do daily that could be adequately explained in a textbook or be taught in a training session? And these are your low-value activities that just about anyone could do with a relatively little experience. They are the replicable aspect of your job. What is it that you are instinctual or intuitive about? What are the things you do in your job that you couldn't easily describe or show the others? And these are your heuristic abilities, and you have developed them through practice and experience. They are a sort of wisdom that often appears as a flash of genius. Being as specific as possible, write down how you feel when you are relying on your heuristic abilities. What are a few specific moments in which you were successful because of this ability? Why do you feel that way you do? And this will help you build belief in yourself. Confidence Builder 2. Try something new to practice confidence and improve your brain health. Earlier, we said that novelty, doing something brand new, helps keep the brain engaged. Indeed, doing new things is a powerful tool that can help us grow our brains and grow our confidence. It helps us practice being comfortable with discomfort. Every time we learn something brand new, we change the shape of our brain, and that new growth actually feels a little uncomfortable as our brain works to make a new neural connections. The more we repeat the new activity, the thicker the neural connection becomes and the less effort the brain has to expend in executing the task. It's the old adage, neurons that fire together wire together. The more your neurons fire together through repetition, the thicker the neural pathway becomes, and soon you have learned a new behavior. This continues throughout your entire life unless, of course, you decide to stop learning. Several years ago, I was invited to dinner in my neighborhood. One of the guests was a 78-year-old man by the name of John, who was as quick and sharp as anyone 3 times younger. We talked about a variety of topics, and when he found out that I studied and taught facet of human motivation, he asked me what I thought was the single best source of information about motivation. There are plenty of books on motivation, but probably the one that stands out for me is the term of strict motivational research is David McClelland's succinctly titled Human Motivation. I saw John about 4 months later at another neighborhood gathering. He had purchased and read McClelland dense 600-page tome. He wanted to discuss some theories in it. We chatted, and his probing showed that he really was interested and actually understood the theories very handily. I asked him why he jumped so deeply into the topic, not to mention into the very academic research on motivation. I will never forget his answer. Scott, at dinner a few months back, you casually asked me how I kept my mind so sharp, and then dinner conversation from the other end of the table interrupted us. My answer is that I never ever stopped learning. I'm as curious now as I was a youngster. I'm not done yet, and this one is a living lesson of what novelty can do for our brain. Never stop learning, never. And as John shows us, we don't have to be an expert to enjoy the learning journey. Inspirational, isn't it? Learning something new can be a yearly goal, and every few months goal, and or even a daily goal. If it's something bigger like learning an instrument or a language, that is excellent for brain strengthening as an ongoing goal over a year or more. If it is something like learning how to knit or some similar activity that can suffice as something you do as a few times, it is a struggle that helps the brain grow. For both our brain and our confidence to benefit, and the new learning does not have to be something sophisticated, and this is important and exciting. We don't have to achieve mastery in the new skill or knowledge to benefit from a growing brain. We don't have to become expert. We just have to try and be willing to endure a bit of discomfort that comes along with growing our brain, and think of the things you have tried. Look ridiculous doing it, and yet enjoy it truly. Bowling comes to mind for me. Regardless of any initial embarrassment or discomfort, trying new things for grow confidence, and our brains delight more in the first time we do something than any other time. Like going to a country we have never been to, there is always a first time for every experience, and the first time is usually one of the most precious to the brain. Sometimes the positive surprise is the one that comes when we try something new and our brain gives us a self-talk of confidence. Hey, see, you could do it after all. Have you ever watched someone's eyes after you show them how to do something and they do it? The look is powerful, almost maniacal. It's fueled by the chemistry of the joy and confidence. It's a curious thing that on one hand the brain craves certainty, on the other it jumps for joy at the new experiences. It's worth repeating, the mastery is not the goal. The client services manager in my company, Tammy Batzer, took an adult class for organic chemistry. She has absolutely no need for it in this career she is now. I asked her, why is it? And she replied simply, my daughter is taking it and we will be able to help each other with it. And the other reason is that I know nothing about organic chemistry. I figured, why not? She took it, but not for the grade. What she got in return was likely a bigger brain, practice with doing something daring, a new sense of confidence, and time to bond with her daughter over carbons and polymers. Trying something new requires a dash of daring. I will quote David White again. Courage is that feeling you get when you were standing on a surface that feels like it cannot hold you, but you're standing there anyway. Confident people keep going in spite of that little bit of anxiety about what could go wrong. If you feel yourself moving into a threat state as you tried a new activity, go back to the activation on page 19. And this time imagine yourself doing the skills or tasks and think about what you will do in the eventuality of your worst fear coming to be. Confident is not the competent, it's a willingness to try, and that in turn could lead to competence. Activation. Every 6 months, get on the internet to research a topic or skill that interests you, but in which you have no experience. Start small, but start now as you look for the steps necessary to begin learning more about that topic or skill. Then go to just one lesson or read one book. Do something completely novel once every year or so and learn to ballroom dance or play the guitar or flute. Learn a new language, go on a drive trip on the North Pole. Yeah, those kind of trips. Learn to fly an airplane or sail a boat, learn to paint. It's not about mastery, it's about novelty. Keep your brain growing, start small, but start now and do something new. Go forward with the mindset that it's alright if you look like a beginner. You are, into the confidence that comes with letting go of having to look like you have already arrived. Don't put any pressure on yourself to be right or perfect. Just have fun, enjoy the brain growth, and remember that the more you practice, the better you will get. Think about and write down the things you like the least about yourself, and why do you dislike these things? What have others said about it? How has it limited your life or career? Can you do anything to change it? Are you willing to it? If not, are you willing to accept this perceived flaw? Make a list of the things that you are feeling unconfident about it in your job. Visualize, plan, practice around these situations. Reassess your fears. Do you fear these things because they actually happen frequently, or are you just imagining they will? Jump. Stop now. Part of the feeling is confident is feeling that we have willpower to exert in a situation, that we are enough, an event that we have enough. That mindset can help brings us peace and control, and is the next topic for discussion. Chapter 6. Willpower and focus. Controlling your own attention. We spend a lot of our brain's energy on self-control or willpower. You may have heard of a famous marshmallow test studies given to 4-year-old by psychologist Walter Miesel. In the 1960s and the 70s, he conducted tests at Stanford University in which researchers tested children's ability to resist eating a marshmallow when they were left alone for 15 minutes. Some were successful and the others succumbed to the temptation. Look for the studies on YouTube. They will give you a good giggle as a child after a child works with every fiber of their being to keep from eating the marshmallow. Michelle followed the children into adulthood and found startling result. In essence, those who had the willpower to keep from eating the marshmallow had higher SED scores, better body mass indexes, better educational attainment, and other skills later in life than those who didn't wait. Miesel research shed some light on the importance of learning delayed gratification. It makes sense from both a career and life skill standpoint. Do I jump the first promotion offer, even if it does not clearly fit my career objective? Do I buy that furniture on credit now, or do I wait and save? One could argue that the easier path leads to trouble more often than the path that requires more patience, but it often takes willpower to make the better decision. It's been discovered that the same limited resource we use in our brain for self-control or willpower is also used in workful decision making. Willpower is one of those things we all want and need at a point in our life. The abilities to constrain our desire to stay focused are aspects of willpower, and both are inhibitory processes in the brain. This means we have to work hard to stop having our attention pulled to the things other than the task at hand, or to stick with the choices we make. Willpower keeps us from addictions, keep us writing report when the pesky pop-up email and Facebook notification want us to do something else, keep us studying, when we want to go play, keep us on exercise routine, keep us saving money instead of spending, and the list goes on and on. It is, in my opinion, one of the single most important skill we have at our disposal. And like all the other skills, it takes practice if we want to get better at it. We can do a few things to strengthen our willpower and ability to focus, each of which we will cover in the following sections of this chapter. First, we can take control of this distraction in our environment to lessen their impact on us. And second, we can practice willpower, particularly in times when we may have more of it. And the third, we can practice being in the now to improve our attention. And finally, we can adopt an abundance mindset when it comes to willpower. Managing distractions, the ultimate in control. In the 1970s, the researchers went into a school where kids on one side of the school were exposed to frequent train sounds and horns, while kids on the other side of the school were sheltered from the sounds. At the end of the year, they found that students on the train side were 1 year behind in math aptitude scores. Given this result, imagine what a little nuisance that put into our day at work to do our daily work. Our work quality, we can all probably relate to that little dog in the animated movie app. He is on a mission but is jolted out of his focus every time he sniffs out and sees a squirrel. He seems like a frantic child saying, "Squirrel, squirrel." That's what our distractions are like, shiny pennies we cannot ignore, but to be successful we must learn to manage them. How many times has your attention been pulled away while you are reading this book or maybe listening to this audiobook? What about the incoming emails that grab your attention every time they pop up in the corner of your phone maybe or a computer screen? There are so many things in our environment that scream for our attention. Willpower help us to tell this thing to stand in line. If you are able to focus, you are good at keeping other things from pulling you off your target. It takes willpower to not look at those new emails and the other projects sitting atop your desk or any other distraction. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could control all the distraction that come flying at us each day? The fact is that as long as we are a part of the working world, distractions are probably not going to go away and could get worse, especially as we accept more responsibility. And this distraction can lead to that gnawing feeling of things left undone, and the resultant neural cocktail can set off a cascade into memory depletion and lost mental acuity. Not so good. As our anxiety goes up, our ability to control our attention goes down. It's a merry-go-round. The more distracted we become, the more difficult it is to manage distraction. One recent study shows that an interruption of approximately 4.5 seconds triple at the amount of error an individual commits when getting back to the task at hand. An interruption of only 2.8 seconds doubles the error rate. That is huge. If you are engaged in a highly detail-oriented task and you get interrupted, this research showed that you are much more likely to have go back and correct your work than if